Hi, grade 6 Grizzlies. Nice to connect with you guys. I'd say nice to see you, but I can't see you. So I am here to do a read aloud to finish. I'd like us to finish A Night Divided. But obviously I can't sit down and read the whole entire thing. So we're going to do it in chapters, or 1 or 2 chapters or something along those lines. So the first chunk of reading that I do, I'll go back and take a look at the video because one of the classes was further ahead than the other. So I think it was Mrs. Perry's class was a little bit further in the reading, so I can let you know when I get to this spot. But you might even want to just listen to the whole thing because it's really like not a lot, maybe 5 pages. So even for a refresher, you may want to just go ahead and just listen to the whole thing just to kind of back up and we'll remember where we were. So I'll be sending links to your teachers and they will forward them to you. And then just on your own time, whenever you've got a chance, you can sit down and listen to it. If you have any questions or comments or things that you'd like to discuss about the book, I would definitely love to hear it. So that would be great. And I hope you guys are doing a lot of your own reading too, because it is still important to keep up with reading. Obviously, by now you know the value of being able to read not just books, but reading helps you in your writing, and it also helps you, when you have to read your textbooks for other subjects. So I hope you guys keep up with it and that you enjoy reading. So I will continue on here and then post the links for your teachers. Okay? So I have the bookmark here, but I'm not even exactly sure of where I was on this page. So I'll just kind of start from, I'll just pick a spot and start reading. Oh, my battery's low. Okay, there we go. Okay. After supper, Fritz returned to his room with strict instructions that I wasn't allowed to enter without knocking. He'd never done that before, confirming my suspicions that he had some big secrets. I would have snuck in and peeked at his papers if he left his room, but he never did, not once. I didn't find out anything until breakfast the following morning. He came out of his room with the papers in his hand. He commented on how cold it was and that he wanted a fire. It was actually a perfect spring morning, one in which we'd never build a fire, not unless we needed to burn Fritz's papers, of course. I told him I'd help with the fire, and after it was started, he let me see the papers. I had figured it must be some way of getting back together with Claudia, but it wasn't. What he had written was so much worse. Page 1. There's no future here for me. I'm leaving East Berlin tonight. My eyes widened and I drew in a sharp breath. He shook his head as a warning for me to keep quiet, and then crumpled that page and threw it in the fire. Page 2. I found a place near the spree that isn't well guarded. I can run for the water and swim across before I'm seen. I shook my head as violently as I dared. The spree was a powerful river, and the Berlin Wall ran along much of its wide banks. Large, heavy boats navigated that river, and everyone knew the current was stronger than it looked on the surface. Even for an experienced swimmer, it was dangerous. For Fritz, it would mean death. Remembering the microphones, he commented that the fire should get us warm soon. I was too stunned and angry to make any response. Then he raised his pages again. Page 3. I wanted you to know so you can explain to Mama. It's not fair, but it's the best I can do. No! I continued shaking my head, and tears stung my eyes. He wasn't the first to try escaping through the spree, and so many people had died in the attempt. Either they drowned on the way, or else were shot in the back by the Grenzers as they swam. Even on the small chance that Fritz got as far as jumping into the water, he wasn't likely to get out again. Page 4. I will not join their military. Eventually, I'll think like they do, and I will not let them ruin my life. You must understand, Gerda. His eyes pled with me to accept his decision, but I couldn't. Yes, I understood the desire to leave and his frustrations over feeling that there was no hope for him here. I felt just as boxed in as he did, maybe even more. There probably wasn't much hope for me either, and it would only get worse if he left me behind. I wanted to leave just as much as he did, but not in this way. Page 5. You can't stop me. My mind is made up. I am going to leave. He started to crumple up that page and toss it in the fire with the others, but this time I grabbed it and ran for a pencil. While making a lame comment to the microphones about breakfast, I smoothed the paper out again. On the back, I drew a map to the building I'd found near the wall and then pulled out the picture Papa had sent to me. On his paper, I wrote, "Meet me here after school. Be careful." Fritz looked up at me, his eyes burning with curiosity. I wrote one more word, tunnel. Once I was sure he knew where to go, I crumpled up his paper and tossed it in the fire. Chapter 18. I arrived at the building first, and despite how anxious I was to get down into the shelter and begin digging, I forced myself to wait in the basement to be sure Fritz got in safely. He approached the building the same way I had, using the shadow of the wall to hide him. I waved him in through the window, and after he slid inside, we shut the boards up again. Fritz was bigger than me, so he had separated the boards even wider, and the nails were bent. If someone really looked at this window, they might notice that the boards didn't shut tight anymore. That made me nervous, but there wasn't much we could do about it. He started to talk, but I'd already opened the heavy metal door into the air raid shelter and quietly motioned for him to follow me. The shovel was down there too, ready to begin. Without saying a word, Fritz stood in the shelter, inspecting it just as I had a day earlier. He opened the crates, patted at the walls, and dug into the dirt to test it. His eyes ran along the ceiling, no doubt questioning where the line for the Berlin Wall should be. If we weren't beneath it already, then it couldn't be more than a meter away. "How did you find this place?" he asked. In a whispered voice, I told him everything. About seeing Dominic and Papa, the dance Papa did on the platform, and getting the picture from Anna. I fully expected his excitement to grow at the prospect of tunneling to freedom, to see his eyes widen the way mine had when I first realized the possibilities down here. If he planned to swim the Spree anyway, this was a much safer plan, and this offered the chance for all of us to get to the west. But instead of showing any enthusiasm, it was just the opposite. With every new revelation, his shoulders slumped further, and the light dimmed in his face. "You were young when Father left, so you didn't know him as well." The tone in Fritz's voice was sympathetic, as if my innocence deserved his pity. "You must have misunderstood his message, if there even was a message. Father never would have asked us to put ourselves in this much danger. Never." "But he did, Fritz. I saw him, and you didn't. You saw him doing a children's dance and read meaning into it. Then why did he send that picture? How do you know it's from him?" In frustration, Fritz turned from me and ran a hand through his hair. "How do you know it's not some test from the Stasi to get us here and then have a legitimate reason to arrest us? They don't play games like that." "They do, Gerda. They do that all the time. If they believe our family has some sort of rebellious streak, do you think they'll sit back and wait for us to commit a crime when they could just trap us now? Or maybe Anna's family drew this picture to lure us here so they can turn us into the Stasi and get forgiven for what Peter did." "Anna's family wouldn't." "Yes, they would. And if you want to stay naive about how dangerous this tunneling idea is, then you have no business even thinking about it. Our friends could betray us. Family members could betray us. Some stranger on the street could report us, and we'd never know who it was. There is nobody we can trust." But he had said us. Fritz and me together. Fritz would never betray me, and even if the Stasi locked me up for a century and did their worst, I would never betray him. I picked up the shovel and pushed it into the dirt wall. Look at the way it crumbles, Fritz. This is soft dirt. He put his hand to it and more dirt fell. Where's the boundary for the death strip? I pointed to his feet. You're standing on it now. He stood back and watched me, which was something. At least he wasn't leaving and dragging me away with him. We could never do something this big, Fritz said. I don't know a thing about tunneling. We can figure it out as we go, I said. All we have to do is keep moving forward and make sure the ground above doesn't cave in. A couple of weeks of digging and then we're out on the other side. So this is where Mrs. Perry's bookmark was for her class. So around here is where we're going to catch up, and then we're all going to be together. They sweep the death strip with sound sensors, he said, but thanks to this shelter, we're already pretty deep. If only we knew how wide the death strip is here. Now his mind was working, and we would have to make sure this tunnel came out into a safe place on the other side, inside another building or something. How can we find that exit when we can't see over there? We can figure that out too, I said, and Anna's apartment isn't far away. I can see the death strip from her bedroom and figure out how wide it is from there. How will you get inside? She isn't speaking to you. I shrugged. First I had to get him to agree to this plan. Details like getting into an ex-friend's home could be worked out afterward. Fritz took the shovel and dug at the dirt, trying it for himself. Within a few minutes, he had already had a gap wide enough that he could stand inside it. Then he turned around. What would we do with all the dirt? There's going to be a lot of it. We can leave it in the room right above us. Nobody looks in there, so it won't be noticed. Yes, but we would be. It'll take a long time to dig this. Someone will see us coming and going from here and start to wonder why, and we'll be dirty with no way to wash off until we get home. I'd already thought of that too. On my way to bringing the shovel here, Frau Eberhardt asked where I was going. I told her the shovel was for a garden. What if we did plant one right outside the building? It's only dirt out there and nobody appears to be using it. We could garden in the day while people are watching and then tunnel when they're not. He dug at the tunnel again, his way of thinking it over. I don't know, Gerda. I grabbed his arm. This is better than trying to swim the Spree. You'll die if you go that way, and whether you make it to the other side or not, what will the Stasi do to Mama and me afterward? We know they've terrified Anna's family. Do you want them to come after us that way? No, he mumbled. No, of course not. If you are going to escape, then we need a way for all of us to escape. We're a family, Fritz. Half of us are already on the other side. If we're going to cross, to be together, it has to be all of us. Fritz stared at me a moment, then crouched down to stare at the dirt wall in front of him. You're right.